I'm Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis, and this, I hope, has become your new favorite sports betting podcast. We've got a very, very special Thanksgiving episode for you today. We're going to be breaking down every single one of the games with my co-host, Raymond Summerlin. It's going to be outstanding. We're going to dive into angles and edges for you in all of the games, and at the very end, we're going to pick our favorite selections and put them into a card over on PrizePicks. So this is going to be a very fun episode. We're going to talk food. We're going to talk football. We're going to talk a lot of other things in between. That being said, we did drop our best bet last week, fell to 10-2 on the season. That's still 83%. Over the last 2 years, we're still 32-11. That's 73% lifetime on this podcast. So I'm not too disappointed, even though I wish Jonathan Taylor had one more reception last week. Since it's Thanksgiving tomorrow, before we get started, I do want to show my appreciation for everyone by giving away $600 cash for doing absolutely nothing for each one of you guys, giving the opportunity to get a hold of this cash for your Black Friday discounts and everything else that you want to go buy this week. All you need to do is there's $100 to anyone who guesses the first or the last touchdown scorer of the games on Thanksgiving. There's 3 games on Thanksgiving, 2 $100 prizes each game, totals to $600 cash throughout the day. All you have to do is go to my Twitter profile, look at the pinned tweet over there, and they'll give you the directions to jump on board. But you don't have to do anything. There's no strings attached. All you have to do is go to look at the pinned tweet, and you'll see the easy, simple steps. And most of you guys have already qualified. I'm almost 100% sure for this. So that's going to be a lot of fun to root home some of your first or last touchdown scorers. And we've got some great other looks for you on today's episode. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, I am joined by Raymond Summerlin, our editor over at Sharp Football Analysis, but he's also a writer. He does a lot on the fantasy side of things and helps out on the injury front and waiver wire and everything in between. So Ray is outstanding. I hope you guys go follow him over on X as well. I'm sure you guys see him throughout the feed, talking with Rich Rebar every single Thursday, breaking down our fantasy shows. But in case you're extra special tuned in here on Thursday to get some of Ray's takes for betting and props, I want to make sure that you guys go ahead and check him out on X. Before we dive into the games, Ray, I got to tell you, for me personally, this is probably my favorite singular day of the year. Other holidays have their own special meaning, and some are more meaningful than others. But in terms of just being able to enjoy a day, I love the aspects of food, football, family that this day gives us. Games throughout the day. Basically, it's perfectly socially acceptable to be drinking throughout the day as well. And then just enjoying food all day long, all the way until the very night. It's probably the best holiday in that regard because there's no other distractions to focus on. You know, with Christmas, you've got your distractions there. With Halloween, you've got your distractions there. Every other like event has like other meeting and or you're leaving the house to go do things, et cetera, et cetera. It feels like Thanksgiving is the one time to just like go sit at home and watch football and eat food and drink drinks. And so it's perfect for people like us. But I got to ask you, since I lean on some of your direction for food, you helped me season my Blackstone grill. There's been a lot of other things that you've helped me out with over the last several years. What is some of your favorite tips or tricks for Thanksgiving? Like, what are some of the things that you have learned that really help save either time or make things better for Thanksgiving? Then we'll talk about some of your favorite foods in a second, but what are some of those tips or tricks?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you came to me for this. Obviously, anybody who's watching us on YouTube, we appreciate that. You can tell that I'm a food expert. Obviously, the seasoning of the Blackstone, there were some hiccups, but I think we got there. We got there at the end with that. I guess I don't have a ton of non-food related tips. I mean, I guess just have fun. I agree with you that Thanksgiving is the best holiday. I'm not a particularly big fan of Christmas. You can talk to my therapist about some of the reasons that might exist. this. I'll give all of you her number. She'd be happy to hear from all of you. But so Thanksgiving, it's the one, man. I love it. I guess my biggest trick is it is food related, but buy a smoker and smoke your turkey. Smoked turkey is just so much better than oven turkey. You could order it from somewhere. That's fine. You could take the lazy way out, like our producer Adam does, and order it for somewhere, or you could just smoke the turkey, spatchcock it, smoke it. It's just it's beautiful. Make sure you do that. And
well, I'll tell you what I've been doing. I didn't do this the last couple of years, and I'm not going to do it tomorrow either because I want as much free time as possible. But when I was involved in the prep of turkey, I sort of took over that for a few years. I was deep frying it in peanut oil in like one of those electric fryers that aren't the kind that like tip over and explode everywhere. Not far more safe for like the modern man type deep fryer. And that was delicious every single time. And it also, the thing that I liked about it from growing up, with my mom cooking the turkey, and it was like even when my wife is doing it, a full day long process, of prepping and doing the deep fryer is just like dunk it in, pull it out. It's so much faster. I've also in the past brined the turkey and then baked it in the oven, and that was a long process as well. So I know some people love that process. When you're smoking the turkey, how early do you have to start? Is it a single day process that you start early in the morning and just go, or do you do any prep the night before, like tonight?
Yeah, the night before you got to prep. You got to get all the seasoning under the skin. It's important, obviously, under the skin. But then you spatchcock it, and if you take the breastbone out and flatten it out, it cooks more evenly. It cooks faster. It's not as long to do a 20-pound bird in about 5 hours at 300 on the smoker. And then you just got 5 hours. You just got to maintain I'm out there. I just got to maintain the temperature on the smoker. You got a TV out there. You'll watch the parade. This year I'll be watching some soccer because Europe doesn't care about American Thanksgiving. And my beloved Aston Villa football team will be playing on Thursday morning. Get ready, set your DFS lineups, get your bets in. You're sitting outside next to smoker in beautiful weather. It's heaven. It's heaven. Let everybody else deal with everything else. You get out there with your smoker, you get a drink, you turn on the TV, you watch the parade, you put in some bets. Heaven. Perfect holiday. Nothing better.
Two recommendations I'll have for everybody. First of all, you got to pace yourself with both food and drink. I know a lot of people.
I will disagree, but obviously I have different. I have different thresholds than Warren, as you might be able to tell here. There's a reason why Warren's standing comfortably and I'm sitting here a little bit warm, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, the one thing, like I obviously, there's work to be done. The hardest part about this week, Ray, for me and for guys like yourselves in this industry is, you're trying to condense all the work because you want to enjoy the games. You want to enjoy the food. So like Rich has been working overtime. I have trying to get everything organized with bets, with the articles, with the analysis over at Sharp Football Analysis for everybody. And so Friday is a big day that we have to like come back and keep cranking. So I've got to be more under control a little bit in terms of that. And so that's where, you start drinking a little bit earlier, but you slow it down and you pace yourself. Same thing with the food so that you're still able to tune in and enjoy all of the games all the way through, while then being able to do a little bit of work, at least for me, once the final game is over, get up early, do some work on Friday morning as well. So that's the first one. The second one is you got family around, you got friends around, you're doing whatever you're doing with your get together. I recommend don't tell them how much money you have on every single prop bet, how much money you have on every single game, because it is a no-win situation. If you tell them that you've got more than what they're expecting, and then the bet goes sideways and it loses, then you are obviously going to be talked about, or they're going to ask you why you decided to put that much money on that bet. You're going to get grilled to the nth degree. If you win a bunch of money on something, they're going to ask, what are you going to do with that money? Where are you going to go? What are you going to, what are you going to buy? All these different types of things, and how much you want to give me. They're going to think that all of a sudden they're rich now because they sat next to you and watched you win some money. So it's really a no-win situation, talking about your unit size, your dollar amount, everything that you've got actually wagered on the game. Before we get into those games, I do want to ask you, Rich. I do want to ask you, Ray, what are your favorite foods that you actually enjoy eating on Thanksgiving? Oh, I mean, it's just the classics, a proper Southern mac and cheese made with a good bechamel and then baked in the oven. Some good mashed potatoes. Put your potatoes through a ricer. Don't mash them. Put it through a ricer. Make nice, smooth, non-gluey mashed potatoes like that. We make in my family something called corn casserole, which is basically just corn and cornbread and sour cream and cheese and butter and all the things that kill you. We put all that together, and that tastes good. So yeah, all of those. I do like a ham. I'm in the minority. I do enjoy a ham. I probably will smoke a ham for myself. Maybe
So you do
early
both
next week.
both turkey. Oh, do you do both turkey and ham on Thanksgiving, or
No,
you
I
just
don't,
like?
because nobody else gets behind me on the ham situation. So I'll have to just smoke a ham for myself on Sunday. That'll be my Sunday activity. But yeah, those are mine. What do you got? What are you into?
We could call this podcast episode the ham situation. Some of mine, like I'm very traditional as it relates to that, and I'm pretty open to everything. I'm not that picky. I do tend to try to push like the vegetables off to the side a little bit and focus on some of the main things on Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
because Thanksgiving for me always was, especially when I was like growing up in high school and whatnot, it was a battle with my brother as to like who's going to eat the most food, who can put away the most plates, and the vegetables are just like kind of the things off to the side that you don't want to get filled up too much on, because they're the types of things that you can get almost all the time. Like they're not really specialties that are just for Thanksgiving. Whereas I feel like some of the other side dishes or the entree, we don't really like, I don't know how often you're smoking turkeys, but like we don't really bake a turkey in the oven any other time except for on Thanksgiving. We'll sometimes do like a turkey breast, but I know some people don't love the taste of turkey, don't like turkey that much, but for this one day, it is special. So I do obviously enjoy eating that and all the other desserts that come after Thanksgiving. So it's hard to really pinpoint one specific thing. I will say we have a background from Croatia, and so on I don't even know, like 15%, something like this at this point in time, by the time it's trickled down to me. But there was a dish there called strukla, which is some sort of, I don't know, like potato type thing that you cut up in little pieces and whatnot. And so I enjoy eating that, but that's a thing that nobody else probably is aware of or talks about. So, but I'm pretty much open to everything. Speaking of everything, I want to talk about our Black Friday discount, because that is a great discount that you can get on everything. It is Black Friday later this week, but we're starting right now. It's too good to hold until the weekend. Right now, for our special Black Friday sale, you could take 60% off site-wide. And we just prorated our prices for the rest of the season package. So every single week we've been dropping it a little bit more. So we just dropped it, and now you can use the 60% discount on that, which basically takes down the pricing to under $35 per week, locked in for the rest of the season. Over the season, we've actually produced profit on a weekly basis in 11 out of the 12 weeks for clients, whether you're talking NFL, you're talking props, you're talking totals, you're talking college. Wrap it all together, 11 out of the 12 weeks, we have produced profit for our subscribers. At $100 better following all the college and NFL plays is up over $6,500 since the start of the season. That's a profit of over $500 per week, obviously. If you have, so the point is, you have not missed your chance, even though we've been having a great season, to get on board right now for less than $35 per week. And that's the price, whether you decide to use this discount. The great thing about this, we haven't run it like this in the past. You can use this discount on any of the products that we offer for any duration of time. So if you just want to get in for 1 week, you can get in for 1 week at less than $35, and that's the price for 1 week. You can also get, for the rest of the regular season, get on board for less than $35 per week for the rest of the season, locked in. But the one thing that we've never done with this particular deal before is to get on board for a month at less than $35. So you want a little bit more than a week, but you don't want to lock in the rest of the season. You can do it now just for the next month, and then you're free to do whatever you want after that. And so the best part about that is the fact that you're getting this great discount at a very medium price range for most people. And I think that that's a great deal. It's a great opportunity to get on board and test it out for more than just 1 week at those savings. So highly suggest. We've never done that before. You guys get on board for that. And with that said, let's dive in here Ray, to the first game on deck, and that is the Green Bay Packers taking on the Detroit Lions. This is always that fun game where it's on early, but the issue is I know you're in Texas, so it's on an hour earlier for you. But they pushed the kickoff back 30 minutes this year. So it's the traditional 1 o'clock kickoff. I'm used to scrambling around trying to get ready for the 12:30 because I was like, oh crap, I forgot that this was at 12:30. It's a little bit earlier than normal, but now I don't have to do that. So nobody has to do that, which I'm not sure how I feel about it because I like a little bit extra football time, and there's a chance that this rolls over. This game rolls over a little bit later, but there always tends to be that long gap between the early game ending and the 4:30 game starting. On Thanksgiving, I don't mind gaps here or there, though, because it gives you the time to refuel, unfuel, if you know what I mean, in the restroom, come back for more, get your plate, get on the couch, get ready, talk to your aunt and uncle, and do whatever you need to do. And boom, then you're watching more football. So I don't mind the short breaks, but the NFL just wants us to like stay glued to our couch cushions all the way through. You've got Jordan Love, who hasn't been playing particularly outstanding, down some weapons, might be getting Josh Jacobs back, but in what capacity, that's to be determined, going up against Jared Goff and this Detroit Lions offense, which I think in all fairness, we expected an explosion spot with a good game from them last week. And the reality was, it was the Jahmyr Gibbs explosion. It really wasn't the Detroit Lions explosion. The other weapons that we thought we might get stepping up here because Laporta is out and they were going to have opportunities against this New York Giants secondary didn't really come to fruition. And we saw a team that was struggling and down on the scoreboard. And even though they were struggling and down on the scoreboard, Ray, they still had to lean into the run efficiency of Jahmyr Gibbs and his explosion because through the air, they weren't exactly moving the ball like a hot knife through butter in this New York Giants defense and scoring points that way. So we're looking at a game where they're going up against a much more difficult defense, a defense that Jared Goff has struggled a little bit more against historically, hasn't produced these ridiculously impressive numbers. What is your first take? I'm going to ask you just a broad brush question, but any of your favorite looks from a player perspective, from a game perspective, just open-ended, kind of what are some of your thoughts about the Packers versus the Lions?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say we are recording this pretty early on Wednesday morning, so we don't have complete injury, clarity on this game, which this is the game that's pretty interesting for. You mentioned Josh Jacobs. It does seem like Josh Jacobs is going to play, but we have no idea about Jaden Reed. If Jaden Reed comes back, that'll be very interesting because Jaden Reed can potentially replicate some of that after catch ability and big play ability that they were getting from Tucker Kraft. And we've seen this Packers offense.
I do want to, sorry, I'm going to throw you off track here, but I do want to step in and just say, I find it very bizarre that a lot of these teams for this particular day, and I have no idea now, like the collusion aspect of me and like the NFL, what do you call it? Like the tinfoil hat theory is really got me thinking about this of late. How many of these players are going to be potentially returning on that short week? We're talking about Isaiah Pacheco. We're talking about Jaden Reed. We're talking about a guy like Josh Jacobs who missed some time. Maybe he's coming back on this short week. We're talking about Joe Burrow coming back on this short week. Like, how much of this, Ray, to you, is it like, okay, normally we don't really see this. If a guy is healthy enough, then he's playing on that Sunday where he's got a full week to prepare. How many of these guys, when you actually don't do very much practicing between Sunday and Thursday, are like, no, I can't play week 12 on Sunday, but all of a sudden I'm perfect to play a couple days later without having gotten really any more practice time into me, more than walkthroughs on that Thursday. Especially these Thursday games are not like the Thursday night like they normally are. We got Thursday at 1 o'clock, Thursday at 4:30. It just seems very bizarre to me that a lot of these players that have been injured for multiple weeks can't possibly play on the Sunday, week 12, but all of a sudden can play on that Thursday. Seems like this is a Roger Goodell special where he's encouraging some of these guys. Let's get these ratings. We're going to break all the records for our ratings. They made the Chiefs come with Taylor Swift and play the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. I mean, I think this is a ratings a bonanza for the NFL. And then when all these players coming back, including Joe Burrow, I thought like the NFL was probably quaking in their boots. If Joe Burrow comes back on Sunday and looks bad, not as many people are interested to watch Thursday night football on Thanksgiving. But all of a sudden, Joe Burrow is back and more eyeballs are going to tune in than otherwise potentially to see how he looks in his first game back against the Ravens. So that's my conspiracy theory for today.
Well, I'm glad you got out of your comfort zone and went into NFL conspiracies. I know that's always tricky for you to roll into Roger Goodell and schedule conspiracy. I think it's probably more just players want to play on Thanksgiving. It's a big deal, right? And so, like Josh Jacobs, for instance, if Josh Jacobs gets into and they're able to practice a little bit last week, you're actually getting prepared for this game. You want to play on Thanksgiving. It's definitely a big game for the Packers. It's a big game for the Bengals. Speaking of schedule conspiracies, as we talked about before the season, the Bengals having to play on a short week in Baltimore. This continues to happen to them, and Joe Burrow even brought it up before the season. So it's not surprising to me that this is a game that they were targeting. So I think it's more just this is Thanksgiving and players want to play on Thanksgiving is more what I would attribute it to. But like if we're talking about those injuries, I do think even if we get some Lions defenders back in this game, which it doesn't seem like Kirby Joseph is going to play, but we'll see what happens. If we get some Packers back, Jaden Reed back, then that does make things interesting. But I still look at this whole game and I think that of these three games, this game has the lowest total, but I do think that the total in this game might be a little bit high. If you look at just the way these teams are playing, what the Packers want to do, the Packers want to run the ball where possible. They're 30th in neutral drop back rate. Overall, they are third in time of possession third in time of possession per play, both of these teams, although the Lions have been a little bit faster as of late. Both of these teams are mid-pack in plays per game, so both of these teams will move slowly when they need to. The Lions are 27th in neutral drop back rate, although they have been, again, a little bit higher as of late since Dan Campbell took over play calling. So you just look at all of it, and I wonder if this is going to be more of a slog. And the Packers, we know, even if the running's not successful, and I do have questions about Josh Jacobs wasn't very successful as a runner because of the line in front of him, even when he was healthy. Now he's coming back not full health. Like they're still gonna run the ball. They ran Emmanuel Wilson, 28 times last week. And so you look at all of that, and I have concerns about what this game can be. And if you're thinking about playing DFS like I do on Thanksgiving DFS is wonderful. And you have to pick, okay, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to build these lineups? This is the game where you're not as excited about. Of course, that also opens up the opportunity that this is the game everybody's not as excited about. And so if it does hit and does go off, and I do think there are avenues to that, then you can get a lot of, contrarian value in it. So it's interesting from that perspective to me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious to see, we have seen in the past the times that the Packers have made intentionally desirous jumps out and leads and trying to gain that quick lead. Those are the best Packers teams. Those are the best Packers performances. It doesn't necessarily feel like they're playing with that objective here in 2025, which makes it so that their games are a little bit more tight and more compact and more close to the vest. So from that regard, I'm curious as well. I'm also curious to see how we're going to get target distribution here out of the Detroit Lions in this game, because look, Sam Laporta is out, and Amon-Ra, I want you to talk a little bit about your thoughts on Amon-Ra in this game, but it seems to me, at least we're looking last week as a guide, you're going to need somebody to eat up those targets for the Detroit Lions. The Lions might not just be able to come out here against this run defense and run the ball 30 times. So you're going to have Jared Goff dropping back to pass the ball. It's at home. They're in their comfy confines. And who's going to be targeted on these passes? I think we're going to see that continued increase in usage for Jahmyr Gibbs, just because even though you might not have the most perfect game state, like if the Lions are leading in this game, technically Jared Goff doesn't throw the ball quite as much to Jahmyr Gibbs. And Rich did some digging into that and pretty surface level stuff. It's pretty clear that that's the case. However, if they are still throwing the football, there's just not that many guys that they now have a lot of confidence in. And I know Brock Wright was banged up a little bit as well. So talk to me a little bit about some of your concerns with Amon-Ra, because I know there was something in the worksheet about that as well.
Yeah, if you go and read the worksheet preview for this from Rich Rebar, which I would highly recommend you do, you see that the Packers, especially under Jeff Hafley, have done a really good job against Amon-Ra St. Brown. We saw that in week 1. We saw them do a good job against this defense. I mean, this offense just in general in week 1, taking Jared Goff off his first read, forcing him to throw the ball underneath, which worked out well for Sam Laporta, worked out well for Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs had 10 targets in that game, I believe. And St. Brown, so these are all from the worksheet from Retriever. I would recommend you go read it. St. Brown has had fewer than 20% of the team's targets in only 4 games since the start of last season. 2 of those were against the Packers. He's had 3 games against Hafley's defense. And St. Brown has had 35%, 15%, and 15.8% of the team's targets in those games, with a 756-1, 543-0, and 445-0 lines in those games. And so you just kind of look at what they've been able to do into taking away St. Brown as the first read and forcing the Lions to do something else. And then we saw Jameson Williams obviously not get what we were hoping for last week. Jahmyr Gibbs obviously had a big game. He can be a big factor in the passing game as well. But there are concerns here about Amon-Ra. And if their Packers are able to take away Amon-Ra St. Brown, then what do the Lions have? With, like you said, Sam Laporta's out. I mean, I guess we're not like terribly excited about Brock Wright, but he's at least an option, and it seems like he's going to be out. And so where are they going, right, with this if they're not able to get Amon-Ra St. Brown going? It's a big concern for sure for them.
The last thing I want to throw in here, Ray, is as you were looking at some of the props players that you were interested in, is there a specific player that you sort of gravitated towards, or a couple of different thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm very interested in Josh Jacobs under receiving, possibly as a play. His lowest route rates of the year have come when he was injured. We had that run of games in which he wasn't playing quite as much because he was hurt. It was week 7 through 9. He had a 45.5% route rate, 37.8%, 39.5% route rate. He did have 8 targets. I think it was 8. No, it wasn't quite that many, but he had a decent game in one of those. But he still just wasn't on the field as much. And I do wonder, especially if this game remains lower scoring and remains close, and the Packers are trying to get Josh Jacobs the ball as a runner rather as a receiver, I wonder if we do get more of Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks in there getting those receptions. And so I'm very interested to see where that ends up going. As of time of recording, we don't see that one, but that one is very interesting to me. And then just I'm interested in Christian Watson longest, because this Lions defense is a pretty good defense, and they have DJ Reed back. We'll see how much he plays, and so there are lots of reasons to like it. But when they give up plays, they tend to give up pretty big plays, and so that's some place that I'm going to look as well. The Lions are 30th in yards per completion allowed, even though they are again another pretty good defense, at least against wide receivers. That's against wide receivers. So I think Christian Watson longest makes a lot of sense here.
If Jaden Reed is not up, they really are still lacking that kind of mid-range game a little bit. That mid-range jump shot that's out from the NBA. It's a lot of the underneath stuff or the deeper stuff. Jordan Love throwing off his back foot, trying to get something down the field. They don't really have that consistent, dependable underneath attack, which is in part probably why they just ran the hell out of Emmanuel Wilson last week on the ground. Okay, let's pivot into the second game. You guys have gotten some refreshments. You got your second round of food. Maybe you're about to sit down to your meal, and you tell your family, look, guys, I'm going to be shoving food down my gullet for about 20 minutes, but I'm going to watch the game in the other room in a second. But we got this 4:30 Eastern time kickoff, Chiefs at Cowboys. It's going to be a fun game. Obviously, the NFL is hoping this is kind of like the biggest Thanksgiving game in history in terms of a viewership, and all of us will be tuned in. It's going to be fascinating to see. You're looking at the potential return of Isaiah Pacheco. You're looking at a Chiefs team that went into overtime, played last week, survived, and now must go on the road on a Thursday, and not even a Thursday night game, but a Thursday game a little bit earlier, shaves off a few hours of player rehab and preparation for this game from a body health and healing perspective. And I know you've got a nice little nugget on that in a moment, Ray, that I'll toss it over to you for. But then on the other side of the thing, you've got the Dallas Cowboys, which staged a furious comeback last week against the Philadelphia Eagles, got themselves into a 21-0 hole, were able to rally back out of that. Their run defense, their defense overall has been rejuvenated with the insertion of Quinnen Williams and some of the other players that they received and that are back healthy as well with Overshawn, etc. And this team has been playing a little bit better defensively, but they still are playing a lot of zone, which is going to really feed into what Patrick Mahomes has success going up against. So it's going to be fascinating to see Patrick Mahomes going up against these guys. I mean, the way that this total is set, Ray, they're expecting that both of these teams are just going to be chucking the football for 60 minutes against one another, because this is another extremely high total. And I know it's hard to look towards the under when you've got Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott, and you just saw what both of these guys were able to do through the air. But I'm thinking to myself, if I'm Steve Spagnuolo, the defense coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, my strategy is the exact inverse of what I was trying to do last week. Last week, I did not want Jonathan Taylor to beat me on the ground. I wanted to force the ball to be in Daniel Jones' hands. And if I'm going to lose this game, it's because Daniel Jones is brilliant being able to beat my defense and throwing the ball over the top of me. In this game, that's exactly the inverse. If I'm going to lose this game, I want to have to lose it because Javonte Williams just was the most productive running back and gained no less than 6 yards every single time he touched the ball. I do not want to get beat over the top in a singular play from Dak Prescott to George Pickens, from Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb. I cannot sacrifice all of those chunk gains. One of the reasons why is the Kansas City Chiefs are still struggling to generate those chunk gains themselves. So you could get a Dallas Cowboys team, theoretically, that could go and score on a 5-play, 75-yard drive. And then the Kansas City Chiefs probably aren't scoring and coming back on 5 plays, 75-yard drive. It's going to take them twice as many plays because they're more of a methodical. They'll gain in some chunks at times to Rice. We saw in their furious comeback against the Colts last week. But for the most part, their traditional offense, they aren't having success on those deeper chunks down the field. So I'm not getting burned by Dak Prescott if I'm Steve Spagnuolo. So sets up for a very interesting game and change of game plans and tactics potentially. Where do you come out in terms of who you think is going to have the most success on a team or player perspective here?
Well, I do think from, like, just to your point, the way the Chiefs are play defense, the way that they're running out. And we talked about this last week with Alex Pierce. So Alex Pierce, somebody that I've been high on for several weeks just because of his role in that Colts offense. But what the Chiefs do and how they limit big plays was always going to be a concern for him. And we saw that happen and just his usage and how many targets he was getting as well. We could see something similar here for George Pickens, although Pickens has just been so good. And some of the numbers against outside receivers aren't as good as you might think for the Chiefs, giving the overall success that they've had limiting wide receivers this year. So that's going to be interesting to see, because I mean, it's possible that Pickens is just that good, right? At this point in time, the way he's making plays, he's just that good. On the Chiefs' perspective, like, maybe Spagnuolo wants to kind of slow this game down, and maybe he wants to force the Cowboys to run more, but the Chiefs probably aren't going to be in that position. First of all, you don't have to invite the Chiefs to throw. They have one of the highest, I believe it's now the highest neutral drop back rate in the league. They're going to throw. That's what they want to do. And I think what we're looking at this Cowboys defense with the changes that they've made, and obviously bringing in Quinton Williams has been a monster as a pass rusher and is getting a lot of pressure, which obviously you want to see. But the big change we've seen from this Cowboys defense, because they were actually, even when they were bad, they were still getting pressure. The big change we've seen is that this run defense has just been elite over the last 2 weeks. Now, it was elite against the Raiders and it was elite against the Eagles without Lane Johnson. Those two teams, have struggled to run the football throughout the season. So maybe it's not a perfect kind of encapsulation of what we're going to see from this defense. But if you look at the additions they made and some of the players they got back, you would have expected this run defense to get better. And then that's exactly what we've seen. And they haven't just been good. They've been the best run defense against running backs over the last 2 weeks, like the best in the league over the last 2 weeks. The Chiefs also don't run the ball very well. So I don't know how much success we're going to get out of a returning Isaiah Pacheco, who seems to still be wearing a big knee brace. Kareem Hunt coming off a massive workload on a short week, an older back. Rashard Smith just hasn't been used in that way. I don't know how much we're getting out of those guys. I think we're going to see a lot of passing here from Mahomes. And obviously, if they have success, because that Cowboys defense is still vulnerable to the pass, if they have success with that, that pushes the pace for the Cowboys as well. So you look at this total and you go, all right, this makes a lot of sense. What I would say is the one thing is that Mahomes has been lackluster against pressure this year. And he's also taken a lot more sacks against pressure over the last 2 seasons. So this is a 2-season thing we're looking at, where his sack to pressure rate has spiked from where it used to be. He used to be one of the best quarterbacks. Now it's not quite as good, but he's still Mahomes. But there's that. If you look at that, you think, okay, could the Cowboys force a interception, force a fumble, kind of get the game going that way. Maybe that's how we get under this total. But I think the Chiefs are going to throw. I think they'll probably have success throwing. And if that happens, then that just pushes the entire game environment.
Yeah, first of all, you've got Dallas. They play a lot of cover three. Patrick Mahomes is good against cover three. On the other side, you've got, and I've continued to reiterate this all season long, the worst team in the NFL against play action is the Kansas City Chiefs defense. And you've got a team in the Dallas Cowboys that uses play action and does it quite effectively. The question becomes, how much does Brian Schottenheimer lean on trying to establish the run early on in this game? It doesn't have a lot of success. And then do they come back with the play action after that? Or could they come out with some shots early on in this game, which is what I think would be the preferred approach to take here to try to jump out on the Kansas City Chiefs. And the great thing about the way that the Kansas City Chiefs are built, though, is that they don't do anything different. To your point about having that high pass rate, they don't get scared if they get down because they're just leaning into that passing game that they already love and adore early on in games as well. So they don't really have to make any changes there. The Cowboys sort of don't love to abandon the run, but they still had a lot of run attempts, even last week against the Philadelphia Eagles, which is why I think the running back, Javonte Williams, had like 20 rushing attempts in a game that they were down 21-0 in the second quarter. A lot of teams would more so abandon the run. They came and stuck with it. So I think that this is going to still be some good running attempt game from the Dallas Cowboys, regardless of what the game state is here, to try in part to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. So there's a lot of these strategic ideas that some of these coaches could take to lower the score of this game. But there's also the opportunity for this thing to just bleed out and leak and, big plays everywhere, which is where you could find some opportunity. You're not going to get great value per se in like a George Pickens or a CeeDee Lamb from a yardage perspective, nor with Rashee Rice. But where you could get some value is if you're right on some of these props and you ladder up some of these auxiliary receivers specifically for the Kansas City Chiefs. If you do have a Patrick Mahomes drop back game against this tough Cowboys run defense, like you mentioned, Ray, and you need Patrick Mahomes to throw the ball a lot, yeah, Rashee Rice could get his, but you could also have guys like your Tyquan Thornton or your Marquise Brown, these guys with like extremely low prop numbers that could end up getting over their total and then help you win some ladder bets. So that's going to be interesting as well. What is some of the looks here that you think? I know we're going to be building this prize picks card, and I think one of the ones that we've leaned into the most is Pacheco fully healthy, and just sort of buying into the fact that it's a great run defense. This might be a passing game for the Kansas City Chiefs more than it typically is, and you're not going to get a lot out of Isaiah Pacheco on the ground. So you could go under his total rushing yards is one way that I think we were looking at this one. Was there anything else that you wanted to call out specifically, or should we go to the last game?
I think if we're going to get a lot of Mahomes passing attempts, he's been throwing interceptions lately. He's got 5 in his last 4 games, and 1 in every game. Like we said, the Cowboys can get pressure. Mahomes has not been as good against pressure. I could see Mahomes like over half an interception if you want to throw that out there. The Rashee Rice, you said the Rashee Rice number is high. It is 100% high. It's, I believe, 73.5 yards. But like this defense that he's going up against sets up perfectly for him because of the way that the Cowboys play zone. Rice has been targeted on 32% of his routes against zone this year. The Cowboys are 6th in the rate of zone coverage. It sets up really well for him. And then I am interested. This has not really been hitting a ton. It did hit last week, but I'm very interested still in Javonte Williams receiving because they haven't been using him a lot that way, but he has still been running routes. He's been running routes still in that 50 to 60% range. The number is going to be low. It's in the single digits, 9.5. It feels like if this game goes into the environment that Vegas is expecting with a 52.5 point total, that we're going to see some receptions for Williams like we did last week when they were in comeback mode. And so that number is so low that I'm still very interested in it because even though he's not getting the targets, Williams has been on the field. And I do think that is at least notable. But yeah, I think we're looking at Pacheco here coming back from injury, probably not going to get the carries if, for instance, the Chiefs get into a trying to wind down the clock mode late. And so I'm very interested, I think, in Pacheco here.
Yeah, I still don't quite understand some of these offenses that don't target the running backs a little bit more because there are some efficiencies there, especially when you've got guys like Lamb and Pickens, though, working down the field. The defense is so concentrated and focused on those areas that getting your running back out in a little bit more to the passing game absolutely could find some voids in that defense. I don't know why Shoddy doesn't lean a little bit more into that. All right, let's talk about the last game of the day. We've got the Cincinnati Bengals with the return of Joe Burrow going up against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. You have two quarterbacks here that are slightly banged up. I mean, Joe Burrow says that he's 100%, but he's obviously exceeded all expectations in terms of his timeline that he's returning. And the big question that I have here is, we know that Joe Flacco, this is his kind of last hurrah, more or less. And he was very comfortable. He's a big dude, Ben Roethlisberger type, standing in the pocket, taking some of those hits. He's been doing it for years. He doesn't have an injury history. And he knows if he gets hit and, breaks his leg or something, they're like, okay, my career is basically over anyways. So this is my ride into the sunset here. Joe Burrow has had a massive injury history. He is a lot more fragile than a Joe Flacco has been. He does not seem to be quite as comfortable under the live fire of the bullets as a result of some of that history. I'm just going to wonder, from a pass protection standpoint, from this offensive line, we know that this was the weak point of the Bengals heading into the season. We know that they didn't address it properly in the offseason. We saw Joe Burrow running for his life with like a chicken with his head cut off during the preseason, and we were joking about it and worried about it. We bet the Bengals team total under their win total rather this season, and that bet has already cashed, Ray, because of their loss last week. We've officially been able to cash that ticket, but you're looking at a team here that probably is not going to be able to protect Joe Burrow very well. And how's he going to stand in there and deliver against this defense of the Baltimore Ravens? On the other side, you've got Lamar Jackson, who every single week a different injury is popping up on his injury report. And he certainly doesn't look like he's pressing to run with the football down the field. He's doing, in fact, everything that he can to continue to buy time behind the line of scrimmage to see if something opens up before he runs for a yard or two and falls down. This is a guy who does not look like he is fully healthy, and it's impacting him to a degree. I think it's impacting their run game because there's not the threat of the pull and the read from Lamar Jackson, and some of these Derrick Henry runs is limiting some of the upside, especially early on in games for Derrick Henry. But you're going up against a Cincinnati Bengals run defense that is a massive step down in class from what the Baltimore Ravens have been dealing with of late, and is a great opportunity for them to lean a little bit more into the run game. What angle are you taking from an approach perspective? Obviously, we're without the wide receiver number 2 for the Cincinnati Bengals. But Jamar Chase is back. So you lose Higgins, you gain Jamar Chase. You've got your number 1 wide receiver with your quarterback number 1 for the Cincinnati Bengals. Where are you looking here on either side of the ball? Where do you want to start?
Well, I think the number one question I want answered is this Ravens defense actually good, right? And again, we don't know if Kyle Hamilton's playing. If Kyle Hamilton's not playing, it seems they want him to. He got in practice on Tuesday. We'll see ultimately what happens. Again, we're recording this on a Wednesday morning. If he's playing, that is a big deal for them. And you look at what this Ravens defense has been, especially since the bye. It's been one of the best defenses in the league. They've gotten back to being a very good defense. But then you look at that schedule and you go, okay, how real is this? They played the Bears, the Dolphins, the Vikings, the Browns, and the Jets since their bye. To be fair to them, they did limit Matthew Stafford before the bye. Matthew Stafford did not have a great game in week 6 against them. And so that does lend some credence to this being real, but we have to see. But on the other side of that, as you mentioned, Joe Burrow's coming back from injury. The offensive line's still a concern. And this team just was not as good. This passing game was not as good without T. Higgins last year. He actually played a pretty big role in it. Its team, Joe Burrow last year without Higgins on the field, averaged 6.5 yards per attempt. It was 280 dropbacks. It's a pretty big, sample size there for Burrow. With Higgins on the field, he averaged 8.2 yards per attempt. So Higgins not being there is a big deal. It's going to kind of filter out to maybe not Jamar Chase, although Jamar Chase had worse splits without Higgins as well. But like those secondary guys, the Yosevashes and Penn State legend Mitchell Tinsley and Penn State legend Mike Gesicki, are those guys going to be able to do enough against this resurgent Ravens defense? Like, I think that's really the question here, because this game also has a very high total. It matches that Chiefs Cowboys total. People are going to be excited about this game in DFS, but there are lots of avenues to this game disappointing and not being the offensive bonanza that we would like it to be to close out our Thanksgiving.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just look no further than the way that the Ravens have been playing with Lamar Jackson being beat up a little bit, and their defense does tend to, like, annually get a little bit better later on in the season. This game is a real juxtaposition of where do you put your beliefs? Do you put your beliefs in the history of this series, which is over city, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson throwing the ball all over the field, and each team scoring at least 30 points? Because that's what these games have been, like the last 5-6 times that these teams have met. Just you can't find an under. There have been exciting, entertaining games, and I'm sure that's why the league booked this game on this particular night. But then you look back at, the way the Ravens have been trending with Lamar being beat up, and then Joe Burrow in his first game back. We have seen, just to kind of like tamp this down a little bit potentially, we have seen the Cincinnati Bengals start seasons slow in part because Joe Burrow isn't starting his season particularly fast. And that's with a full training camp at times. And so now he's trying to come back from this devastating injury where they thought he was going to miss the rest of the season potentially, or maybe come back late. But I think most of us thought that was a pipe dream, given the fact that they probably would be in this exact situation, like with a 3-8 record or whatever they're at. Yeah, 3-8. And these games are relatively meaningless. So why would he try to rush himself back? But he did rush himself back, but he hasn't had those games reps, under fire reps for a long time now, several months. So how will he look his first game out? There's definite avenues, I think, in all three of these games to fail to live up to the high total potential that the odds makers have set. But then again, there's other ways that you're looking at what the NFL chose to do here. And this is where, when we're looking at the Sunday slate, we're looking at a little bit of disappointment to some degree, because the league has said, instead of taking like some of our worst quarterbacks and feeding them to the wolves against like the Lions at home or the Cowboys at home, we're going to take the Green Bay Packers, who are one of the best football teams in the league. We're going to take the Kansas City Chiefs, who are one of the best football teams in the league. Again, this is before the season started. The NFL doesn't know what these teams are and what their injury history is going to be. And we're going to take the Cincinnati Bengals, who has Joe Burrow and goes up against the Ravens all the time in his great games. And we're going to put these games on Thanksgiving. And as a result of that, then you factor in the Friday game with the Eagles and the Bears. Like, the games on Sunday are far less compelling. The league is definitely trying to break records with what they're doing in these other games. So even though some of the totals are high and the matchups don't look great, there is the possibility that these games just explode. We'll have to see how that goes. Speaking of exploding, it's time for us to build this week's PrizePicks lineup and turn $100 into $600. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports with their easy-to-use app, and they'll give you $50 in lineups instantly as soon as you place your first $5 lineup. Use code WARREN when you sign up. Don't forget, PrizePicks is available in 40 states, including California and Texas. Okay, let's throw up the first selection. We are going with, and this is the reason why we're going with this one, is this is unique to PrizePicks. You're not going to be able to get this at most other books, and that's Jahmyr Gibbs more than 5 receiving targets. Now, if Jahmyr Gibbs hits 5 receiving targets, this one just falls out of the 3 lineup, and we've got, I think, $100 to win 300 instead of 100 to win 600, which I'm fine with. Jahmyr Gibbs has been going well over this in terms of target rate, well over this in terms of reception rate. And part of the reason is because they don't have the auxiliary weapons to be able to utilize here after Sam Laporta went down. They have been needing to go to Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm mostly curious, the only way this loses, in my opinion, is the game state aspect of this. If the Lions are up by 10 or 14 points in this game and coasting, they're not going to need to throw the football as much. You're going to get Jahmyr Gibbs on the ground being utilized there far more often than you will through the air. So if you are of the mindset that this game could be close, or the Packers could have a legitimate shot here against this Lions defense, then this is even more appealing to you. Second one up for the second game of the day is Isaiah Pacheco, rushing yards less than 28.5. This one, as we mentioned, as Ray just said, the Dallas Cowboys the last 2 weeks have been the best run defense against running backs in the NFL. That run defense has improved. You're going up against the most pass-heavy team in the NFL of the Kansas City Chiefs, and now there are multiple mouths to feed. Pacheco might be coming back, but he might not be 100%. We just saw Kareem Hunt take a workload of carries, and this is a player who they love and rely upon and feel very confident in just handing the ball to Kareem Hunt. So I don't feel like they feel they need to insert high doses of Pacheco because their run game has been very disappointing. In fact, they leaned on their run game at times last week, and he delivered. Kareem Hunt delivered. So I think that they feel good with whichever back is here, but they just might not be running as much. And you might not be getting the 70-30 run load towards Isaiah Pacheco in his first game back. And in fact, this rushing yards number is less than Kareem Hunt's rushing yards number. If you're just curious what the odds makers are thinking about how these guys are going to get worked back into this mix, it's not going to be at least their predictions are, it's not going to be a 60-40, 70-30 in favor of Pacheco. At best, it's going to be a 50-50 split, and potentially Pacheco is the less efficient runner as well. So you've got that for the second game. And then the nightcap game, we've got Ray's favorite, Mike Gesicki. He shared a little bit of information about why the Cincinnati Bengals without T. Higgins like to go to Mike Gesicki. Obviously, if you're looking at this slip here from PrizePicks, you see that it doesn't look all that compelling. Mike Gesicki really hasn't gone over this line very frequently. But that being said, he's in a situation now where Joe Burrow's back, who loves targeting tight ends, who loves targeting Gesicki when Gesicki is healthy. You've got Jamar Chase. The Ravens are obviously going to focus on that. They're not necessarily worried about getting beat by Mike Gesicki. They're more so worried about getting beat by Jamar Chase in a few single off shots. And the other thing here that we have to realize too is that Joe Burrow is not Joe Flacco. When Joe Flacco first came to the Cincinnati Bengals to play that first game, I want to say it was against the Pittsburgh Steelers, potentially, Ray, you saw that there was like this concerted effort. Our receivers are unhappy. We got to go out and make the move for Joe Flacco. And what are you bringing in this hired gun? It's to throw the freaking ball to Jamar Chase. And so that's what he did. He came on and just threw 1 billion times to Jamar Chase. That's not the situation Joe Burrow is stepping into. That was what Joe Flacco was. But Burrow, he's stepping into his normal offense. He's going to throw the ball to the guys that are open. He's going to throw the ball to the guys that have the upside. And at times when they're without T. Higgins, it's Mike Gesicki a little bit further down the field, as you mentioned. So you might want to look at yards rather than receptions. And we're looking at more than 33.5. Put all three of these together. You've got your 1 o'clock, your 4:30, and your 8:30 games covered. And you've got a shot at turning $100 into $600, which you can do over at PrizePicks. So if you like the idea of incorporating targets into your portfolio, you got to go over to PrizePicks. You want to use that code Warren. Click the link in the description below. Just click on that. You'll get launched to the app, and there you can get $50 in lineups as soon as you place your first $5 lineup. It's a great offer. So take advantage of that. And that will more or less do it for us. Ray, anything else that you think about on this Thanksgiving slate that we did not get a chance to discuss yet?
No, I'm just excited. I would love to see. I'd love to see 100 Derrick Henry runs to close out the night against that defense and just see what happens. But yeah, we'll see. Get some Penn State legends. Get Mike Gesicki in the end zone. Let's do it, Joe Burrow. Let's have a great time on our Thanksgiving.
One thing that I'm curious about there, I'll just throw in another question for you here. Keaton Mitchell, Keaton Mitchell didn't have as many opportunities in the last game. If you do have a banged up Lamar Jackson on a short week, and you also have Derrick Henry on a short week, do you think that there's the opportunity to see a little bit of Keaton Mitchell? I'm looking at some of the charts here. I don't know if you can make any of these out, but these are the Cincinnati Bengals, and this is their run offenses that they've played recently. And you're talking about some of the worst run offenses in the NFL in terms of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Green Bay Packers, the New England Patriots. Now they're going up against the Baltimore Ravens down here at the bottom, which is a definite jump. And then if you look at the Baltimore Ravens in perspective, they've gone up against a lot of difficult run defenses here. Prior to that, they played the Chicago Bears, which is one of the easier teams that they faced. And they exploded, and Keaton Mitchell had 40 rushing yards in that game. Now they're finally going up against the Cincinnati Bengals after playing a slew of more difficult run defenses, not the best in the NFL, but just significantly more difficult than the Cincinnati Bengals, who are still without Trey Hendrickson. Could be an opportunity to have a couple explosives here from Keaton Mitchell potentially. That's a very short ladder if you wanted to climb that. Derrick Henry's a little bit more difficult. My question is just, do they continue to load the big dog up here on a short week and just say, we don't care? Or do they give Keaton Mitchell a little bit more run if the Ravens are indeed having some success as 6.5 to 7 point favorites in this one? Any quick opinion on that one before we get out of here?
Yeah, and Justice Hill didn't practice on Tuesday with a neck injury. Hill and Mitchell don't exactly play the same role, but we did see in that game that Hill missed. We did see more snaps from Mitchell. Saw him get involved a little bit more as a receiver, even though that's not one of his strengths, right? And so, yeah, can we get him in there for 5 carries, especially if Hill's not in there, as a change of pace against this defense with the explosive plays you can create against this Bengals run defense? Yeah, I'm all in on that, especially since we tend to get his longest number lower. So that's interesting. Just something to think about as we move forward with a guy like Keaton Mitchell.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And then the other thing, we were highlighting just the potential for Isaiah Pacheco to be back, but not really to be back, right? Like not really to be the strong Isaiah Pacheco lean into that we've seen in the past. You might want to consider this for a lot of these guys that are returning. Like you might not get an A+ performance out of Joe Burrow. You might not get 62 rushing yards out of Josh Jacobs here. Like some of these guys that are coming back that might be sort of rushing back, they want to play on Thanksgiving, whether the league has encouraged it or there's no conspiracy whatsoever. We might see some of these guys in their first games back not really perform to the level of expectation that you at home might remember from them, or the books might be setting from a lines perspective. So it could be an opportunity to take some lower thans or bet the unders in some of the player props here as it relates to some of these other guys, or maybe it's throw an interception for Joe Burrow, like make some mistakes for some of these guys as opposed to have like pristine performances and they're back as if nothing ever happened and they're in perfect shape with no injury impacting them whatsoever. So just want to mention that, as well as I'm seeing some of the lines get posted here for Josh Jacobs and thinking, this could be an interesting opportunity to fade that.
I got one for you in that same vein. This is not him coming back from injury, but Samaje Perine's very likely to play in this game. And we saw before Perine went out with an injury that Chase Brown's role in the passing game evaporated, which makes sense. That's where you would want Perine. That's why they brought Perine in. And obviously Chase Brown's been very good. And so he's really turned things around for himself. Since I traded him in Dynasty, you're welcome, Chase Brown, for me saving your career. But he's turned things around. So maybe they want to use him. But that massive usage from Chase Brown came about because Perine was out. Before Perine was out, we saw Chase Brown more of like a 40 to 50% route rate guy. They've adjusted his receiving numbers, at least from what I've seen. So maybe this isn't something you can play, but it's just something to keep in mind, especially if you're like thinking in DFS, all right, I'm going to get 6-7 catches out of Chase Brown. Maybe not. So it's those types of situations can, play. I know I said it in my head.
You did that on purpose. I
really didn't do it on purpose. I apologize to all of the parents who are listening in the car and had to just see that happen.
Their kids are screaming. Yeah, their kids are screaming in the background, going nuts because Ray dropped the 6-7 reference. As they're listening to this on their car ride, the fantasy dad is driving, is like forcing all the kids and the wife to be quiet so he can listen to this podcast on the main radio, not in a headset. And all of a sudden they drop the 6-7 reference, and the kids are like, "Thanks for putting that show on, Dad."
I will whip myself in penance. I apologize to all of the fathers and mothers out there.
So yeah, it should be a great day. A couple quick things here. Make sure that you enjoy it to the best of your ability. Like take advantage of whatever you've got. Be thankful for some of the things that are in your life that are positive. Dwell on the positives that you've got in your life, whatever they are, because it is a great day to look and reflect, and then also have some fun. Hopefully you guys can turn some of the thoughts that we've had here into some positive bankroll in your accounts by the end of the night. Also keep in mind that this is a day that the public has their say. And I can promise you, like Uncle Frank at 7:00 at night isn't thinking about some sharp unders that he wants to bet for the Ravens Bengals game. There's a lot of guys that are coming into the marketplace with a little bit of money that would just want to bet on overs and positive things to happen. So the later on at times that you wait to bet some of those unders, the better lines that you could potentially get, whether it's on the game totals, whether it's on the individual players, whether it's on underdogs, all of those types of things, even though the favorites from an ATS perspective tend to do really well on Thanksgiving. Short week for road teams traveling. The home teams are generally the favorite. The better team is, generally speaking, the favorite. And as a result, it's harder for the underdogs to make those adjustments, to figure out how to attack and compensate for the fact that they've got the worst team on a very short week, which is why sometimes we see some of these underdogs play great in the Super Bowl because they've had a couple of weeks to whip some things out. Whereas on these short week games, they just don't really bring as much to the table because they don't have as much time. So a couple of parting thoughts there. Make sure that you guys are subscribed to the channel on YouTube, on your favorite podcast app. And in addition, make sure that you guys tune into our Friday show, which will be out a little bit later than normal because we're dropping this one on Wednesday for you. We're not recording on Thursday. Obviously, we're going to come back on Friday morning with a pretty standard version, but it might be abbreviated in some regards on the Friday episode, but getting you ready for all the games on Sunday. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure that you tune in. Have a happy Thanksgiving from all of us to you guys, and we'll see you soon. Go,